The War Council chamber hummed with the usual displays of martial prowess. I watched mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among my kind, as Commander Throkk demonstrated his technique with the plasma lance, a weapon that required all 4 of his primary appendages just to stabilize. 300 victories, he boasted, his carapace gleaming under the station lights. Not a single opponent has survived my assault pattern. I nodded politely, though frankly, I had heard this speech approximately 17 times before. The Galactic Combat Institute existed precisely for moments like these, where warriors from across known space gathered to prove their superiority. Every species had their specialty. The Krolith had their triaxes. The Ven used energized shields that doubled as crushing implements. My own people, the Theks, favored precision needle rifles that could pierce armor from half a kilometer away. But dual-wielding? That was biologically impossible. Oh, there had been attempts. The Margoks, with their 6 arms, tried using 2 weapons simultaneously about 40 cycles ago. The result was, well, let us just say the medical bay worked overtime, and we stopped allowing them near the armory unsupervised. The problem was not just physical coordination. Combat neurology across every studied species showed the same limitation. 1 weapon, 1 focus, 1 killing implement. The brain or neural cluster or hive mind consciousness, whatever the species possessed, could only track a single weapon's trajectory, weight and momentum effectively. It was scientific fact. It was military doctrine. It was common sense. Then the human girl walked into the training arena. Her name was Kira Wells, and she looked, frankly, unimpressive. Humans were new to the Galactic Coalition, barely 30 cycles since first contact, and their physiologies screamed prey species. Binocular vision, sure, but weak bone density. Minimal natural armor, no venom sacs, no retractable claws, no acidic defense mechanisms. They had conquered their homeworld through persistence and tool use, which was respectable in an adorable sort of way, like watching an infant Grak learn to hunt. She stood maybe 1.7 meters tall, with brown skin and dark hair pulled into a practical knot. Her training uniform was standard issue, nothing special. She carried no weapons, which was normal for initial assessments. Cadet Wells, Instructor Vrax, announced, his 3 eyes scanning his datapad with obvious disinterest. You will demonstrate basic proficiency with standard melee implements. Choose your weapon. The armory wall displayed our collection: shock staves, energy blades, kinetic hammers, plasma cutters, and about 40 other implements of elegant violence. Each weapon had a designated weight class, balance point, and neural feedback system that interfaced with the wielder's combat reflexes. Kira walked up to the display, and I swear, there was this tiny smile on her face. Humans have this unsettling ability to move their facial muscles in ways that convey emotion, and this particular configuration made my sensory antennae twitch with something I later recognized as foreboding. She reached out and selected a standard combat blade. 40 centimeters of molecular-edged metal, balanced for thrust and slash, with a grip designed to work with most humanoid appendage configurations. Perfectly reasonable choice. Then she grabbed a second one. The training hall went silent. I mean completely, utterly silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to pause in shock. Cadet, Vrax said slowly, his translator struggling with the confusion in his voice. You have, selected 2 weapons. Yes, sir, Kira replied, her tone so casual you would think she had just ordered lunch. Is there a problem? Throkk laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded like rocks tumbling down a mountainside. Human, you cannot possibly. I mean, the neural pathways alone, not to mention the muscular coordination required to... Watch this, Kira interrupted. And then she moved. I have seen many things in my 12 cycles at the Combat Institute. I have watched Krolith warriors shatter reinforced barriers with single blows. I have observed Ven shield dancers create defensive patterns so complex they looked like geometric art. I have witnessed my own people thread needle shots through impossible angles, but I had never seen anything like what Kira Wells did with those 2 blades. She started with a basic form, or what my combat training recognized as basic. Right blade high guard, left blade low. Then she flowed into an attack pattern that should not have worked. The right blade came down in a slash while the left swept up simultaneously, creating a scissor pattern that would trap an opponent's weapon, or limbs, or really anything unfortunate enough to be in that space. Impossible, someone whispered behind me. But she was not finished. Kira spun and both blades moved independently, tracing arcs that covered multiple attack vectors at once. Her right hand performed a thrust while her left executed a horizontal slash. Then she reversed the pattern, weapons crossing without tangling, each blade maintaining its own momentum and trajectory. The combat dummy she was demonstrating on never stood a chance. It was designed to withstand focused assaults from single weapons. It had approximately 7 reinforced impact zones and could regenerate between strikes. Against Kira's dual-blade assault it lasted perhaps 15 seconds before its structural integrity failed, and the whole thing collapsed into sparking debris. She stopped, breathing only slightly harder than normal, and turned to face Instructor Throkk. Both blades were still in her hands, held with casual competence. "Will that suffice for basic proficiency, sir?" she asked. Throk's translator emitted a sound I had never heard before, something between a cough and a systems malfunction. That was, to say, the biomechanics involved in the combat doctrine clearly states that perhaps we should test her against an actual opponent, Throkk interrupted, stepping forward. His earlier amusement had vanished, replaced with something that looked suspiciously like wounded pride. Theory is one thing. Actual combat reveals truth. Oh no. I knew where this was going. Throkk was old guard, traditional, and absolutely convinced of his own supremacy. Having a human demonstrate techniques that violated everything he believed about combat must have felt like a personal insult. Kira shrugged. Sure, why not? The training arena cleared quickly. Someone activated the safety barriers because apparently everyone else also recognized the disaster about to unfold. Throkk selected his preferred weapon, a massive powered sword that most species needed mechanical assistance just to lift. He hefted it like it weighed nothing, which to him it probably did not. First contact wins, Throkk announced, sounding resigned. Lethal force disabled, medical teams on standby. I noticed he called for medical teams, plural. Smart. They squared off. Throkk in his traditional stance, weapon held in a two-handed grip, body positioned for maximum power strikes. Kira in, well, I honestly did not recognize her stance. Both blades active, held at odd angles, weight distributed in a way that looked wrong according to every combat manual I had studied. Begin, Throkk commanded. Throkk charged. 300 pounds of muscle and armor, moving with surprising speed, his powered sword humming with barely restrained energy. His technique was flawless, a downward strike that would have bisected most opponents even with safety protocols active. Kira did not block. She sidestepped and both her blades moved. The right one deflected Throkk's sword just enough to send it past her, while the left blade scored a touch on his shoulder pauldron. The strike would not have penetrated his armor in real combat, but the sensors registered contact. Point to Cadet Wells, the automated referee announced. Throkk froze. That was, you could not possibly, the angle was wrong for. Again? Kira asked, and that tiny smile was back. They reset. This time Throkk approached more cautiously, his sword moving in controlled arcs, testing her defense. Kira responded with a pattern I can only describe as organized chaos. Her blades never stopped moving, each one independent but somehow coordinated. When Throkk struck high, her left blade was there to deflect. When he tried a low sweep, her right blade intercepted. And through it all, one weapon was always attacking while the other defended. It violated every principle of combat focus. It should not have worked. The human brain should not have been able to track two separate weapon trajectories, defend and attack simultaneously, maintain balance while executing independent movements with each hand. But there she was, doing exactly that. Throkk grew frustrated. His strikes became harder, faster, abandoning technique for raw power. Bad decision. Kira simply flowed around his attacks, her dual blades creating a defensive sphere that seemed impossible to penetrate. Then she saw her opening. Throkk overextended on a particularly vicious slash, and both her blades struck together, one on each side of his sword. The combined impact sent his weapon flying across the arena. Before he could recover, both her blade tips touched his chest plate. Match to Cadet Wells, the referee announced. The silence in the training hall was profound. We had just watched a human, a species barely integrated into coalition military structure, defeat one of our best warriors using a technique that every expert agreed was impossible. Kira stepped back, lowered her blades and offered Throkk a small bow. "Good match, sir. You almost had me twice there," which was, for the record, complete nonsense. She had controlled that entire fight from the first move, but I was beginning to understand that humans had this peculiar social custom of polite lying after defeating someone utterly. Throkk took his sword back, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. "How?" he finally asked. "The neural pathways, the combat doctrine, everything we know says this is impossible." Kira shrugged again. It seemed to be her default gesture. Back on Earth, humans have been dual-wielding weapons for thousands of years. Swords, knives, sticks, whatever worked. Our brains are kind of wired for tool use and pattern recognition. Using two weapons is just, an extension of that. Plus it really confuses opponents who are not expecting it. "I noticed," Throkk said dryly. Word spread through the Combat Institute faster than a hull breach alarm. Within 2 hours, every combat instructor, tactical analyst, and weapons specialist on the station had found an excuse to observe Kira Wells train. I positioned myself in the observation gallery, datapad ready, determined to understand what I was witnessing. Commander Zilith, head of tactical studies, stood beside me. Her scales were doing that color shift thing they did when she was deeply confused. "This should not work," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "I have run the simulation 6 times. The cognitive load alone should cause neural cascade failure." And yet I gestured toward the arena below where Kira was now sparring with 3 opponents simultaneously. All 3 were experienced warriors. All 3 were losing. Her right blade caught a thrust from a Ven shield fighter, redirecting it into the path of a Krolith axe strike. Her left blade scored a touch on the 3rd opponent, a Margux using paired shock staves. Wait, paired staves. I looked closer. Yes, the Margux was attempting to copy Kira's technique. It was not going well for him. His movements were uncoordinated, jerky, like watching someone try to pat their head and rub their stomach simultaneously. Within seconds, Kira had disarmed him with a blade twist that should have required her full attention, except she executed it while simultaneously defending against the other 2 opponents. 17 hells. Zilith breathed. She is not just using 2 weapons. She is thinking in parallel combat streams. That got my attention. "Explain." "Watch her eyes." "No, watch where she is, not looking." Zilith pointed at the arena. Right now her visual focus is on the Ven fighter, but her left hand just executed a perfect counter against the Krolith without her looking at him. Her peripheral awareness and spatial processing are operating as separate tactical systems. I watched more carefully. Zilith was right. Kira's head tracked one opponent, but her body responded to threats from multiple vectors. It was like watching someone conduct an orchestra while also performing surgery. Each hand operated with independent intelligence, yet somehow remained coordinated with the whole. "How long have humans been doing this?" Zilith asked. "According to the cultural database, approximately 4,000 cycles. They have historical records of dual-wielding warriors in multiple civilizations. Apparently some of their ancient fighters used different weapons in each hand, long swords paired with short blades, or offensive weapons combined with defensive implements. 4,000 cycles of evolutionary pressure toward multi-weapon combat adaptation," Zilith said softly. "Their brains literally developed to handle this. Meanwhile, we spent the same period optimizing for single-weapon mastery." Down in the arena, Kira had defeated all 3 opponents. She was not even breathing hard. The real chaos started during the tactical assessment briefing. Fleet Admiral Korvan, Supreme Commander of Coalition military forces, had arrived personally to observe this phenomenon. He sat at the head of the briefing table, his expression unreadable, while combat data scrolled across the hollow displays. "Let me ensure I understand correctly," he said, his voice carrying that dangerous calm that admirals used before ending careers. "This human cadet has invalidated approximately 300 cycles of established combat doctrine in a single afternoon." Instructor Throkk, who looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else, nodded. "Yes, Admiral. The implications are, well, significant." "Significant." Korvan let the word hang in the air like a weapon. "Commander Xylith, your analysis?" Xylith activated her presentation. Combat footage filled the displays, showing Kira from multiple angles. "Admiral, what we are witnessing is not just skill. It represents a fundamental difference in how human neurology processes combat information. Their brains have something called hemispheric specialization. The left and right sides can process information semi-independently while maintaining communication through a neural bridge structure. In plain language, Commander, humans can literally think about two things at once, sir, not perfectly, but functionally. This allows them to operate two weapons as separate tactical systems while maintaining overall strategic awareness." One of the senior tactical officers, a grizzled Thex veteran named Korrex, leaned forward. "This changes everything. Every boarding action, every close-quarters engagement scenario, every hand-to-hand combat doctrine we have taught for the past 2 centuries assumes single-weapon deployment. If humans can reliably dual-wield in combat situations," he did not need to finish, "we all understood. Humans were already formidable due to their persistence, adaptability, and frankly disturbing tolerance for punishment. Their physiology let them keep fighting through injuries that would incapacitate most species. Adding genuine dual-wielding capability to that mix created something entirely new." "How many humans are capable of this?" Korvan asked. "Unknown, sir," I replied, accessing my research files. "However, historical records suggest that while not universal, a significant percentage of their warrior cultures practiced dual-weapon techniques. Some human populations appear to have cultural traditions specifically built around paired weapon combat." "Show me." I pulled up historical footage from Earth archives. Ancient humans fighting with paired swords. Medieval warriors using sword and dagger combinations. Even more recent examples of their special forces operatives trained in paired knife techniques. The footage was primitive compared to our technology, but the principle was clear. This was not new for them. This was traditional. "They have been preparing for this their entire evolutionary history," Xylith said quietly. "And we never noticed because we assumed our limitations were universal." Korvan was silent for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. Actually laughed. A deep rumbling sound that made everyone in the briefing room uncomfortable. "Do you know what the Vrex Dominion's combat assessment of humans concluded?" he asked. "Dangerous due to unpredictability and refusal to acknowledge defeat. Moderate threat level in conventional combat scenarios. They dismissed human close-quarters potential as adequate, but unremarkable." He gestured at the displays showing Kira systematically dismantling experienced warriors. "I believe we should send them an updated assessment, perhaps with video attachments." That got a few nervous laughs. The Vrex were currently engaged in border disputes with the Coalition. They considered themselves the apex military power in the sector. Their entire tactical doctrine emphasized individual warrior superiority and dueling prowess. They had absolutely no counter-doctrine for opponents who could wield two weapons effectively. "Sir," Throkk interjected, "with respect, Cadet Wells is exceptional even by human standards. We cannot assume all humans have this capability." "Then test them," Korvan replied simply. "I want every human currently in Coalition military service evaluated for dual-weapon proficiency. And someone contact Earth's military liaison. I want to know if they have specialized dual-wielding combat units." Spoiler alert, they did. Apparently humans had entire military traditions based around paired weapons. They just had not mentioned it, Because, and I quote from the liaison's response, "You never asked, and we assumed you knew since it is pretty common in our history." Pretty common. They thought weapons techniques that violated established xenobiology were pretty common. I found Kira later in the equipment bay, meticulously cleaning her practice blades. She looked up as I approached, that small smile appearing again. "Let me guess," she said. "Everyone wants to know how I do the thing with the two swords." The thing? Yes. I settled into a comfortable observation posture. "Your performance today has caused significant doctrinal disruption." "Sorry about that." She did not sound particularly sorry. "Back home, this is just normal. My grandfather taught me paired blade work when I was 12. Said it was family tradition going back about 6 generations. We are not even that special. There are whole schools dedicated to twin weapon fighting. But the neural processing required is something human kids learn playing video games," Kira interrupted gently. "We spend our childhoods training hand-eye coordination across multiple simultaneous inputs. Gaming controllers require independent finger movements, while tracking visual information and responding to audio cues. By the time we are adults, managing 2 weapons is just an extension of skills we have been developing since we could hold objects." I processed this. Human children trained for combat through recreational activities. Their entertainment prepared them for warfare. This was either brilliant or terrifying, possibly both. "The other species will adapt," I said. "They will study your techniques, develop counters, modify their own combat doctrines." "Maybe." Kira held up both blades, examining them in the light. "But they will be learning something that goes against their instincts, their biology, their entire evolutionary history. For humans, this is natural. We have been tool users working with both hands independently since before we left the trees. Literally. Our arboreal ancestors needed to grab branches with one hand while reaching for food with the other. Dual-wielding is just taking that ancient adaptation and adding sharp objects." She set the blades down carefully. "Besides, even if other species learn to dual-wield, they will still be thinking about it as 2 separate actions. For humans, it is one integrated action expressed through 2 implements. That is the difference that matters." A proximity alert chimed. Kira checked her datapad and grinned. "Oh, good. Admiral Korvan wants to see me. This should be interesting." "You are not concerned." "Why would I be? I followed all the rules, used authorized equipment, and won my matches fairly. If anything, the Admiral probably wants to recruit me for something." She paused. "Actually, knowing military officers, he definitely wants to recruit me for something." She was correct, of course. Within a week, Kira was leading a specialized training program, teaching dual weapon techniques to interested coalition personnel. Within a month, Earth had sent 70 instructors to establish formal paired combat schools across coalition space. Within 3 months, the Rex Dominion received a very pointed demonstration of human dual-wielding capabilities during a border skirmish. They requested immediate peace negotiations shortly thereafter. I attended one of Kira's training sessions, purely for research purposes. Watching various species attempt human combat techniques was educational in ways I had not anticipated. Most struggled with the coordination, a few showed promise, and occasionally, very occasionally, someone had what Kira called a breakthrough moment when the dual weapon pattern suddenly made sense. "The trick," she explained to a frustrated Krolith student, "is not thinking about 2 weapons. Think about one attack that happens to use 2 pointy objects. Your brain wants to track each blade separately. Instead, track the target and let your hands figure out the details." The Krolith tried again. This time his paired strikes flowed together instead of fighting each other. Not perfect, but improvement was visible. "Better," Kira encouraged. "See? Your species can totally learn this. It just takes practice and unlearning some assumptions about how combat works." I approached her after the session. "Honest assessment. How many coalition species can realistically master dual-wielding?" Kira considered the question seriously. "Master? Maybe 20%, with years of training. Achieve basic competency. Probably 60%. But here is the thing, they do not need to master it. They just need to understand how it works so they can fight against it effectively. Knowledge is power, right? And humans retain the advantage regardless. Well, yeah, she grinned. We have literally thousands of years of head start and biological advantages. But raising everyone's combat capabilities makes the coalition stronger overall. Stronger allies, better prepared forces, more tactical options. Everyone wins. That evening, I compiled my final report on the human dual-wielding phenomenon. My conclusions were straightforward. Humans possessed unique neurological and physiological adaptations that enabled genuine dual-weapon combat at a level previously considered impossible. This capability had significant tactical implications for coalition military doctrine. Humans were more dangerous than initial assessments indicated. Much more dangerous. But also, and I made sure to emphasize this point, they were sharing these techniques freely, teaching potential weaknesses, explaining their methods in detail. This was not the behavior of a species planning conquest. This was the behavior of species committed to mutual defense and collective improvement. Humanity had walked into the galaxy carrying 2 swords instead of 1, and instead of using that advantage to dominate, they offered to teach everyone else how to fight better. I attached video footage of Kira Wells dismantling 3 opponents simultaneously while explaining her technique for the camera. Then I submitted the report and hoped the Council had the wisdom to recognize what we had found. Not just warriors, not just allies, but partners who made everyone around them stronger. Even if they did insist on using 2 weapons like absolute madmen, which according to every human I consulted, was actually completely normal. And why were we all so surprised about basic combat techniques? Humans, terrifying, helpful, and utterly convinced that their impossible abilities were perfectly ordinary. The galaxy would never be quite the same.